All
We're
right.
live.
We're live.
I'm gonna share the link to our Twitter, boys.
We are live.
I'm gonna wait for people to get in here.
Yeah, I'll tweet it out
Gotta-
while we're doing that.
Welcome for those that are here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just start going here.
I was gonna say, I think I hear an echo. Is someone watching it on their YouTube
Yeah.
on their phone?
My bad. We're good now.
Okay.
We're back.
All
I
right.
was copying the link.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the few of us that are here. We'll make sure to hit the like button and share the stream. Let's try to get more people in. Today we're gonna chat about Trace Ford, the addition of him to the roster. Definitely a much needed addition to the defensive line. And we'll talk about the Cheez-It Bowl. As you can see, we've got some Cheez-It boxes right there. We're munching on some Cheez-Its in these bowls. I don't know if Brum has any Cheez-Its prepared for himself, but we're celebrating over here.
Brum has no Cheez-Its. He has no Miller Lite.
I'm not
even a bowl
prepared.
game.
I'm not prepared.
All right, boys. Let's get started. Let's kick it off with Trace Ford. D lineman transferred from Oklahoma State. A lot of Oklahoma State fans are not very content.
Doug Gottlieb.
Doug Gottlieb, probably one of their more notable alumni, is very frustrated with that situation. Brum, what are your thoughts on Trace? The fact that he went from one side of the Bedlam rivalry to the other, and what he brings to Oklahoma.
You know, it's big. I think what's big about it is he's got 2 years of eligibility left as well. And I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just one year left and that's all he's got. But he came to his senses. He realized, hey, I should go be on the winning side of the rivalry. I don't blame him, and probably be developed better. But looking at it, it's a much needed addition. But also, we tweeted it out. This staff went head to head against USC on the defense, and who won out in the recruitment? And Oklahoma did. And I think that's going to show. And while Trace Ford isn't a 5-star or anything like that, Oklahoma is now going to start winning these battles against like a USC and other programs. Obviously, they won out in the Peyton Bowen sweepstakes and the other sweepstakes. But bringing him in, he has a lot of veteran leadership. He will add some toughness. I just can't get over, honestly, the backlash. I guess I can. I can't get over the backlash that he's received from the OSU fan base, where, they always pride themselves on class and everything else. Like, they always trash OU fans. I mean, there were some, I don't know if you saw the message board geniuses and things like that. I mean, there's some horrible things. And at the end of the day, even if we had a kid go from Oklahoma to Oklahoma State, I would certainly hope that I know every fan base has it, but it's ridiculous, the backlash that people, like the ill will people, are wishing on him. What do you guys think?
I agree with you, but unfortunately, we would have those fans doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying we would.
The actual crazy part is, like, the stupid fans are going to be stupid fans. That is what it is. You can't help that. But like Doug Gottlieb, I keep going back to that because that dude is literally a professional, if you will. Like, he literally works for CBS or some shit. Fox or whatever. He worked for CBS, so he transferred to Fox. Worked at ESPN, he left, so he's transferred in his career too. But for him to be there as a grown man and just shit on Trace Ford when he has a platform like that, I thought was crazy. That's the biggest thing. But I mean, yeah, that's ridiculous.
It also just makes no sense because at this point, I think it's also a bubbling of frustration because they've had a lot of big time contributors to their defense leave. I think that's probably partially because Jim Knowles left and they saw that was a big impact to how the defense itself came together. And then Gundy being an extremely stubborn person when it comes to his staff and how he's putting it all together. Because you saw their quarterback left in Spencer Sanders, and we saw throughout the season, if you guys watch any Oklahoma State football, Sanders and that offensive coordinator did not have the best relationship at times. And Oklahoma State fans that watch them religiously notice how that offense is very vanilla, like to an extreme, probably much easier than high school offenses are in. probably easier than some middle school offenses that ran, to be honest with you, depending on the part of the country that you're in. I'm sure Texas football middle schools play much more complicated offenses than Oklahoma State right now. It's kind of an embarrassment, and Mike Gundy won't do anything about it. And biggest example is yesterday after their bowl game when the reporter asked if there's any thought to doing any staff changes, and he pretty much said that the reporter was a terrible person for even asking that question. And I get where he's coming from, but on the other side, you also got to think the reporter has to do his job. And that's something that Oklahoma State fans are curious about. Will anyone get replaced, or will there be additions to this coaching staff? Because they do need to do something. Like going into the season, them and Baylor were supposed to be the two teams to beat for the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma State was literally 1 yard away from winning the Big 12 championship last year, and they weren't able to do it. You'd figure that they'd try to do something to remedy that and get over the hump. But if anything, everyone essentially did worse this year, except for a couple teams, mainly TCU. But it's amazing how much Oklahoma State fans are frustrated. But on the one side, I think the biggest embarrassment, like Brandon said, is Doug Gottlieb and more notable alumni doing the same kind of stuff that fans are doing, which you expect some fans to do. At the end of the day, that's just how there's always that group of fans in every fandom. So yes, we'll see. But I do think Trace Ford is going to be competing big time. I think one guy that he could be taking some time away from is Reggie Grimes if he can't figure out what was happening there after the first two games. The game was 1 and 2. He destroyed it. It looked like he was going to be all Big 12 first team, potentially an All-American, and then he just flatlined, really didn't do anything throughout the season. I think Ethan Downs kind of has a spot secured because he did do really well in stopping the run. But Reggie Grimes is going to be, if you can't figure it out going into the fall, Trace Ford maybe taking some of those snaps away. And our Mason Thomas is right there trying to take some of those snaps away from both of those guys. So it's going to be a good competition on the defensive line.
And one of the comments that we had is it's true. Doug Gottlieb did transfer from Notre Dame as well. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I understand it's not you didn't do a rival transfer, but it's the same concept anyway. And I don't know. But talking about him on the field, I do agree. I think Reggie Grimes could be a guy that could lose some snaps. And, could Ethan Downs potentially? Maybe. But he got 2 years with Trace Ford, and the biggest deal with him is, can he stay healthy? And unfortunately, it's just been a lot of poor luck for him and everything else. And I certainly hope that he'll be ready to go come fall. I mean, he's been out for quite a while now, and hopefully it's enough time to get him ready for summer ball and maybe even spring ball, depending on how his recovery is going. But I mean, at the end of the day, you add a guy like him who's been at the collegiate level for multiple years. He brings a lot of veteran leadership and brings toughness. I mean, the guy wants to play football. He just can't stay on the field because he keeps, getting hurt and everything else. And I think this is part of these additions that they're getting through the transfer portal is to add a lot of toughness. And adding a guy like, Deshaun McCullough, you had Trace Ford, you had Jacob Lacey, you had those guys. They have a lot of, I mean, I guess not so much Deshaun, but a lot of these guys have quite a bit of playing time. Stogner has quite a bit of playing time. A lot of these guys are coming in and are going to be able to contribute immediately. And then you add in a top 5 class from high school, and you add in the class from the previous year. It's almost a whole brand new roster. And I don't think they're done in the transfer portal after the bowl season. You're going to see a handful of guys enter. And I think Oklahoma's going to pick up a few more because as it stands right now, what are they at? 27, 28 guys total. I'd have to go back and double check. But I do think that they pick up a few more. How many?
29.
29.
You got 4 transfers, and Lacey, Stogner, Ford. Who's the other transfer?
Ford.
Is there another transfer?
You have 5 transfers. Ford, Pearson, McCullough, Stogner, and Lacey.
So then they're at 30 because there's 25 from the high school level.
3 of those dudes, 4 of those dudes, all 5 of those dudes, are going to be instant players.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did Jacob Lacey immediately fill in and play for Jalen Redmond?
I think he's at least in the rotation for sure. I mean, I think that's why you bring in a guy that's been at Notre Dame for what, 3 years now. He's been there 3 or 4 years, and he's coming in, and he can potentially compete and
Well,
contribute.
let's say on the topic then, let's answer Owen's question. Who starts on the defensive line? And if you want to go too deep, you can, but let's kind of give it just a rough idea based on the roster that is present now and who we know will be coming back and is leaving. So, bro, it looks like Bro might be doing a little thinking. Do you want to go first, or do you want one of us to go?
I mean, starting wise, I think at the end of the day, Ethan Downs is going to be a starter, and I also want to preface with, it doesn't matter if they get the first snap or not. It's who's going to be playing the majority of the snaps in the game. I think Ethan Downs will be that guy. Do I think that a potential I'm thinking. You give me a few minutes. I don't know if you guys have everyone in mind already. I'm trying to think right now.
Does PJ have a chance as a freshman? That's what I want to know from you guys.
I don't.
Adebawore?
Why not?
Well, he's not.
Yeah.
He's going to be an edge player.
Edge one, there's competition there. I don't think it's impossible, but look at how the coaches handled last year's defensive line class. We barely saw Grayson Halton. It looks like he's going to be more impactful going into next year. Didn't ever see Alton Tarver, probably the reason why he left. So freshmen shouldn't expect to play immediately. And now, if he puts in the work, it's possible. But at his position, you've got a decent amount of competition. You've got Reggie Grimes, Ethan Downs. Now you have Trace Ford there, Deshaun McCullough, or Mason Thomas. It's a pretty, I wouldn't say it's stacked or very deep room, but there's definitely enough competition where there could be guys keeping him off. Now, my four, I guess, starting defensive linemen, I would say it's Ethan Downs, Isaiah Coe, Grayson Halton. I think we'll get some time at the defensive tackle position, and then the other edge, I'm gonna go with R. Mason Thomas. I think he's showed that he is very quick and good pass rusher, and Reggie Grimes was struggling for most of the season. So I'm gonna pick R. Mason Thomas as the starter, but I could see a lot of rotation there between Reggie and R. Mason, depending on situation. And those guys could even be playing together on third down situations where they really need to get after the passer.
Is Jordan Kelly done, or can he come back? Because I remember him having a really good offseason and a good start.
He's done. He's a redshirt senior right now. I believe he is done.
I passed him in high school, so not too surprising to hear that he's out of eligibility.
I don't. You have class with him nearly 10 years later, but yeah, I'm double checking Jordan Kelly right now because COVID throws me through a loop. And actually, so he played 2018, 2019, 2020. Actually, I think he might have one more year of eligibility.
He has another year of eligibility. He's going to start again, right? Did he have a good season? Because obviously I remember him having a really good camp and he had a really good start to the season against the Popcorn State teams, and then obviously I missed the whole season, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, he came in every once in a while, but there was a lot more flashes and there was consistency with Kelly.
Yeah, he does. I mean, counting the COVID year, I mean, he redshirted once and he has another year of eligibility. So, yeah, I mean, I think Jordan Kelly will be a contributor. I think someone also.
How was he this season?
Most of the defensive line wasn't amazing. So really,
yeah,
the answer is going to be relatively the same outside of a couple guys. I mean, Ethan Downs, someone, who was it? Tawana mentioned it, like future on the inside. I don't think he can get heavy enough to be playing on the interior of the defensive line, and he led the team in tackles for loss. So he was Ethan Downs. So he isn't the greatest pass rusher. That's definitely something he's got to work on. But he's got the ability to be a good edge player. Just how can he be great? That's really the biggest question. Can he become an NFL talent? With this defensive line coaching, possibly, but you've got a lot of competition there. That's why I think R. Mason Thomas is really going to be the guy that maybe not a penciled in starter. I really don't think we have many penciled in starters for the defensive line because they didn't perform extremely well last year. But if anyone's going to be that guy that you could be like, he's definitely playing from day one, it's going to be, I think, our Mason Thomas.
So I've had some more time and thinking about it. So I think my starters, and I'm going to kind of give the two deep and who are going to be playing a lot. I think Stripling, personally, he might be someone, and I don't want to say he's going to enter in the portal, but I could see him potentially not being here next year. I certainly hope he is, since he'll have more eligibility. But I still think Reggie Grimes is going to be there. I see Trace Ford and Reggie Grimes kind of trading off together, or Ethan Downs. I think Trace Ford is going to be heavily used as long as he's healthy. So I see Trace Ford, Reggie Grimes kind of flipping back and forth. And then the other side would be Ethan Downs, R. Mason Thomas, and even Jonah Loalu. I don't think Loalu, he showed some promise, and I think he could potentially be a contributor next year. So really, if I were to give the two deep, I'm thinking Reggie Grimes, Trace Ford, Ethan Downs, and Jonah Loalu, and I think R. Mason Thomas will be sprinkled in there. And then on the interior, I think Jacob Lacey comes in and contributes. I think Jordan Kelly, those three. And then as far as another interior, I mean, could a Grayson Halton? Maybe. I mean, could even an Ashton Sanders come in? I mean, he's a big guy. He's like 300 pounds. Could he come in and maybe play a little bit of a rotation? Maybe. But I still think that there's a transfer out there that OU is going to add soon. I think on the interior defensive line, I think there's someone that's not on the roster or we don't know about. And I think he'll be added at a later date.
Does OSU have any good players that are going to enter the portal that we might want? I think it's fun to take Bedlam players now.
They're all gone. Brandon, what do you? Who's the defensive?
I don't know enough, guys. I mean, that's why I was kind of just gaining stuff from you guys, like, because I remember Marcus Stripling. You mentioned that. I mean, he was the guy that we were excited about because he balled in the spring game, and then again against Popcorn State, these guys looked good. I mean, as you would expect, because they're playing against far lesser competition. And then so it's kind of just, it's disappointing to hear guys like Ethan Downs really didn't have a great season, or Reggie Grimes, because that's guys we were really high on this show. So I'm gonna wait on my predictions, I guess, till I actually get to go back and watch all the games and stuff. I mean, I don't know enough about who played. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to the fans.
All right, well then someone else had a question. We might as well just do this in the first part of this episode. Linebackers.
Jaren Kanak.
Who? All right, so you've got one penciled in already.
Jaren Kanak, right? He has to be.
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think you got the linebackers probably going to be a little bit easier to look at and be like, these guys are starting. I really, it sounds bad, but I hope that Ogwegu does not get to start next year. It's got, ideally, Jaren Kanak has progressed enough that he gets to start alongside Danny Stutzman, and then you have Deshaun McCullough as your cheetah.
Jose, I will add, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that David Owegbu gets moved to the edge position, like as a defensive end.
And I don't know if you guys remember, but that's something that I mentioned last year when we were doing our preseason stuff. Owegbu is good at getting after the passer and getting in the backfield. I've never understood why he's been forced at the linebacker spot, but when he gets his opportunities to just go after the passer, he's good enough to do it. I mean, but again, that defensive line room is going to be tough, right? And it'll depend on his potential move to the edge. Could also depend on what they get in the transfer portal and how they need to put that unit together. Because at this point, the linebackers look a little bit more secure than the defensive line does. And I know it's, again, not the deepest part of the roster, but you have Danny Stutzman coming back, Deshaun McCullough coming in as a transfer, Jaren Kanak, Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis. And Kip Lewis was getting some time last year. And then you have the incoming freshman this year in Omasigo, Pichotti, and I'm missing one other line. Oh, Lewis Carter. Yeah, and Lewis Carter could be an impact player.
I was going to say, it's interesting because when we had Brandon Drum on the show last time, we asked, which 2023 players have a chance to play. And Lewis Carter is a name he mentioned, if I remember correctly, and I have to go back and watch it, but he mentioned Lewis Carter before he mentioned like the likes of, well, and obviously at this point in time, Peyton Bowen wasn't yet committed, but he mentioned it before Peyton Bowen. He mentioned it before, guys like Jackson Arnold. Like, I don't know. I think Lewis Carter could be fun.
Yeah. And looking at the cheetah position, I think it's clear that Deshaun McCullough, that's why he was brought in. I mean, Deshaun is going to be the pencil in starter there. And the second string is going to be Justin Harrington. I don't think Justin Harrington kind of got thrown to the wolves, and obviously he came back at a later date after leaving, entering the transfer portal or leaving the team earlier in the season with the previous staff. Harrington, I think, will be better, but I think McCullough comes in and is the guy at the cheetah position. Danny Stutzman, I think, is a clear-cut leader at the will position. I mean, there's no reason. I mean, he led the Big 12 in tackles, and obviously I understand that a lot of times he was tackling them down the field 6-7 yards, but he was only having to do that because the defensive line couldn't do a whole lot, so he was just running everyone down. And I think that David Wegbu could make the move to the defensive end spot and play more of his natural position, and either maybe like a Jaron Canick comes in, and could a Lewis Carter. I know a Lewis Carter could play the cheetah position, but could he also potentially contribute with Jaron Canick at the mic? Or could I don't know. Or do they try to bring in another transfer linebacker if the right guy pops up? I'm not sure. But I would really like to see Wegbu go play more of the defensive end. And maybe Lewis Carter is that guy that comes in, and him and Canick, and it's just really young at the mic position.
I really don't expect a freshman linebacker to come in. Not with last year's class. Jaron Canick didn't get much of an opportunity, and he was the best linebacker in the 22 class. Barely got any time. He was mainly on special teams. I bet we see a lot of Lewis Carter on special teams, taking Jaron Canick's spot, and Jaron getting to play defensive snaps this year. Kobe, he had a lot, if I remember correctly, he had a little bit of an injury issue at first, and then also with coming in the summer rather than the spring, that held him back a bit. I think we're going to see more Kip Lewis than we do Kobe. And for the cheetah position, if Deshaun McCullough comes in, and I agree with you, I think he's expected to be the starter next year. Justin Harrington may not get much time on the field. He couldn't beat out Deshaun White last year, and when he did get any time on the field, a lot of mistakes were made by him. I hope that those mistakes get corrected this year, but you also have younger guys that have been in that system for just as long as Harrington that can be better long-term solutions. And Harrington, like Jaden Rowe could come in and start and be in the two deep at that cheetah position. I mean, one of the let's just say maybe like a Day McCullough. Day's pretty physical. If you watch any of his high school tape, he's pretty physical when it comes to rushing the passer and stopping the run. He would need to bulk up quite a bit, but he's also just a freshman. So being in that two deep, or being at the cheetah, someone that's considered for the cheetah position going into a sophomore year wouldn't be crazy. Being behind Jaden Rowe, making it like Deshaun, Jaden, and then Day right after Jaden, I think that would be interesting. But I just don't think Justin Harrington is going to be much of a player for Oklahoma as much as some of us may want to believe in him. It just doesn't seem realistic at this point. Even when Lincoln Riley and Grinch were on staff, he had his flashes, but never great consistently. And now it seems like people might be passing him by.
For sure. I mean, at the end of the day, he's extremely athletic, and it just hasn't worked out for him. And maybe another offseason actually being with the team in the system the entire time might, benefit him. But, a lot of things can change. And I'm curious to see, we're talking about the depth chart for next year, but I'm curious to see what the depth chart, obviously Oklahoma's put out the depth chart for this year, but what does it look like today? Because I think today is the future as well. Obviously you've got freshmen that are coming in, and a handful of guys are actually practicing, like a Derek LeBlanc's practicing with the team, which is pretty cool. Chapman McCown. There's two others. I'm trying to remember who the other. Ashton Sanders. Caleb Hicks. Yeah, so you got four guys practicing with them. So what does it look like today? I think CJ Colton probably starts as a defensive back. Huh?
People want Gentry Williams.
Gentry, he was the first he was the first guy to have an interception on the year. And I know it was kind of in garbage time, but he was the first one. And I know he wasn't listed on the depth chart. Gentry Williams wasn't, but could he?
See, I'm going back to the whole next year thing, depth chart. Sorry, but like, so is Gentry Williams going to be a starter next season with CJ Colden's departure? I think the secondary is the deepest position on the team. Maybe safety, because corner, I don't know how deep we really are.
It all depends, because at the end of the day, CJ Colden's going to be gone, most likely, assuming that he does go to the league. And Brandon Drum alluded to that whenever we did our video with him. Jaden Davis is going to probably come back, and Jaden Davis is going to have, I think, one more year of eligibility, and that's who he's directly competing with, is CJ Colden. And then the big deal is, does Woody Washington come back, or does he go to the league? I don't really know what he's going to do. I mean, we'll probably find out here in a few days. I'm sure, he'll either announce or not. But when you look at the cornerback position, if both Colden and Washington left, I mean, the depth's going to be pretty thin as far as veteran guys at the cornerback position. Could a Gentry Williams be in the rotation? Potentially. I mean, because again, it's hard for true freshmen to come in and play day one, even though Oklahoma's bringing in the best defensive back haul that they've had in a long time as far as on paper goes. I think he's going to have an opportunity to compete and contribute next year, especially if those Washington and Colden both leave. There's going to be opportunities for him that he's been on the team the whole year, and he's still recovering from his ACL injury. I mean, he's going to have to compete with Jaden Davis and Kenai Walker. Kenai Walker's a little bit of a bigger guy, and he played a little bit this year as well. But I could see a Gentry Williams, contributing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
This is the position I'm so excited about, because like at safety, I think we're going to be disgusting. We've got Peyton Bowen, who's going to be a dog. Billy Bowman's already, kind of him. You've got a huge addition in Reggie Pearson, who I think is going to play a lot. So safety, I think we're set. You even got RSJ there. Safety's pretty good. Corner's where I get most excited about, because we're losing a lot of guys, as you mentioned. Woody Washington can leave, which would suck. CJ Colden's going to be gone. I would love to see, you guys know how I feel about Jaden Rowe. I want to see Jaden Rowe as a starter next season. I think it'd be cool to have Jaden Rowe and Gentry Williams. That's what I'm trying to speak into existence. Throw the Tulsa guys out there, because I think they're both going to be players.
So I think that in a world where both CJ and Woody leave, Kendall Dolby will be one of the starters and Gentry Williams will be the other. I feel like that is just the most natural. Kendall Dolby is a very good cornerback as a transfer, and Gentry coming in, having developed over a year, he's now 2 years off of his ACL injury that he had in high school. He would be more ready to go than he was last year as a true freshman. At the safety spot, I think that's interesting because, like you said, Brandon, it's pretty stacked at this point. Maybe not the deepest spot, but it's not as big of a concern as it was last year.
The defense.
I think corner is a little bit more deep because you've got a lot more guys at corner, and at safety, at this point we have Billy Bowman, Key Lawrence, Peyton Bowen, Robert Spears Jennings,
TBD.
I think the most likely starters for next year will be Bowman, and it could be a competition between Key Lawrence and Robert Spears Jennings. And Key Lawrence might get the edge because he did play a little bit more than RSJ did. But when RSJ was in, he was fun to watch. He hit guys hard. Morgan Pearson, or not Morgan Pearson, Reggie Pearson. I completely forgot about him. That's another dude that he's probably going to compete with Key for the starting spot alongside Billy Bowman. I think Billy Bowman's really at this point the only guy that you can ride in on the entire. I guess him and probably Danny Stutzman, the entire defense. You can be like, all right, we can at least for sure know that Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman will be starters from the very beginning of the fall, and then probably all the way through the end of the season. Like something catastrophic would have to happen, probably injury-wise, for them to not be on the field as starters for all 12 games next year.
I think a guy like Peyton Bowen, you mentioned you're high on RSJ, and obviously I didn't get to see him play, but I think Peyton Bowen immediately overtakes RSJ as far as depth chart starting stuff like that. Peyton Bowen is going to be really good. And again, I didn't get to see Robert Spears-Jennings, so I don't know. But I think Peyton, because I think Reggie Pearson's going to start and Billy Bowman's going to start. So obviously they're both on the bench as it is. And as the season progresses, Peyton Bowen is he's going to overtake RSJ. It is what it is. Peyton Bowen is going to be really, really good. Bakari Vickers is the interesting one that I wanted to point out. Is he going to play corner or safety?
I believe he's playing corner at the college.
It would make more sense for him to be a corner, I think, because that's, again, I think the safeties room is our deepest room on the team.
Well, and then so for Peyton Bowen, he won't be overtaking Robert Spears-Jennings because they don't play similar safety styles. If anything, Peyton will be in the 2 deep below Billy Bowman next year because they're both considered to be more pass coverage guys. They'll be in the back end of the defense, help making sure that things won't get crazy and for the opponent's pass game. Roberts, and I think I said it in our last video, if it's Reggie Pearson to start alongside Billy Bowman, Robert Spears-Jennings will have a lot to learn and could be a big time safety in 2024 because those guys play very similarly. If you look at how Robert Spears-Jennings played in the very small sample size we got last year, he's a hard hitter, plays downhill, and Reggie Pearson, if just taking the Oklahoma game, first Texas Tech game as an example, is that exact type of safety. He's going to come down and hit hard, and Robert Spears-Jennings will learn a lot from that guy. Again, and I think it's weird to say, Key Lawrence may not even get that much playing time next year. And 2 years ago, he was our best defensive back. It's weird, but it seems more and more true as we start thinking about how some of these players played and where some of these players will fit. Now, Pearson could be a guy that may not really get opportunity like a Trey Morrison did this year, but that all will play itself out in practice. It just seems hard to believe that Pearson won't come in and play almost, if not immediately, then at least be in the 2 deep for next year's roster.
He's been good his whole career. As I'm talking about Pearson here, like the dude started as a freshman at Wisconsin, or I don't know, played a lot, and then obviously when he did Texas Tech, I don't think there's any chance he doesn't play.
And I think what's going to be telling is after this game, how many transfers and who are the transfers, if any, from Oklahoma after this game? Who leaves for the draft and who transfers? Because I still think that there's going to be a handful of guys that will still leave this team one way or another, whether it's the draft or transferring. And if there are some transfers in the defensive backfield or on the defensive side, these younger guys or other transfers that are coming in are going to have more of an opportunity to play. And someone said, I could see Key Lawrence transferring. I don't know if Key would transfer. I would certainly hope he would not. But the thing is, where we're seeing transfers happen, or where we've seen them in the past, is where you get recruited recruited over, and then you become more depth, and then these younger guys or these transfer guys become the guy that you want to be, and that's what sometimes happens, unfortunately. And I think we need to be prepared as a fan base and everything else that there are going to be a handful of guys that will leave after this game today. Here in 45 minutes, the game starts. And I think the defensive backfield, there could be a candidate. I mean, Trey Morrison's going to be gone. Justin Broyles is going to be gone. So there's 2 guys. And if someone does decide to transfer, it immediately starts to shift the perception of, is it all going to be young guys playing, or are we going to have some veteran leadership? I do think Kendall Dolby comes in. You can't be one of the best corners in JUCO and not come in and transfer and compete and contribute almost immediately. So I really also think what we're going to find out what this coaching staff thinks about these current players, these young players on the staff, on the roster today, when it's second half or this game's out of hand one way or another. I think we're going to see what, who goes out there first might be a little bit of a sign who could play next year.
And let's shift over to the game. I mean, we've got a pretty talented Florida State squad versus an Oklahoma team that underperformed. I feel like it's fair to say for this season. We talked about it briefly in our last video. They've got some weapons that are going to be tough to stop for the defense, but the offense for Oklahoma is going to come in and should be well prepared. They've had plenty of time. Jeff Lebby has had plenty of time to prepare for this Florida State defense. Florida State on the defensive side has been pretty good throughout the year. Not amazing. They did allow Clemson to score. I believe it was 34 points if I remember correctly, which Clemson is not an amazing team. Was not an amazing team offensively with DJ Uiagalelei. So, what are your thoughts, Brum, on this Florida State game? Does Oklahoma have a chance to win? What are your predictions here?
Oh, I think Oklahoma has a chance to win. I mean, now it's a 10-point game. Florida State's favored by 10. When you look at the offense, as far as both offenses and the total yardage, both teams are averaging just a hair over 470 yards a game on offense. So the yardage is very similar. Florida State's averaging 36 points a game. Oklahoma's averaging 33 points a game. So it's only 3 points less. And we feel as a fan base and what we watched this year, there were a lot of touchdowns and a lot of points that Oklahoma left on the field, one reason or another, whether it's a drop, penalties or things like that. So Oklahoma, despite all that, puts up similar numbers as a Florida State offense. And granted, they did lose quite a bit along the offensive line, and Eric Gray's obviously going to the NFL. So there's a big loss there, both tackles and running back. When you look at the defense, though, Florida State only gave up about 300 yards a game, which is, about 150 yards better than what Oklahoma did. So Florida State's defense is better. Florida State started off pretty hot. They hit a 3-game skid, and then they finished up strong and they're on a 5-game win streak right now. So they're playing with a lot of momentum coming in here, and Oklahoma stumbled down the stretch. So Florida State, as of recently, and granted they've been off for 3-4 weeks now. So maybe the momentum really won't matter, but Florida State's playing some pretty solid football. And you look along the offensive side, unfortunately, what Florida State does well on the offense is what Oklahoma struggles with. They've got a large receiver in Johnny Wilson. And I know Brandon on the previous video says, he sucks and everything, but he's 6'7". He's got, basically 20 yards a catch, almost 700 yards on the year. 6'7", we don't really have a defensive back. Maybe does Key Lawrence get some more playing time and try to double cover over the top? Or does Kenai Walker get some playing time because he's a little bit bigger? I'm not sure. But Johnny Wilson's going to be a handful, and that's what Oklahoma struggles with. And Jordan Travis is mobile, and Oklahoma struggles with that as well.
You're going into all this analytics and all this stuff that's important and stuff. Sometimes in sports, I believe shit just doesn't matter. Like when you think about Florida State and Oklahoma, what do you think about? Think about it. You think about Oklahoma beating them in the national championship game. You think about Kenny Stills catching the deep ball in the end zone in 2011. We beat their ass. They're the number 1 team in the land or whatever. You think about softball beating them in the national championship. I think literally, there's no evidence or there's no magic trick to this. I just believe certain shit happens. Like Florida State sucks when it comes to playing Oklahoma. It's a fact. I looked up the all-time series because I figured it was lopsided. OU leads 6-1 all time. And I know none of that matters because it's a new game, but I believe in that kind of stuff. Oklahoma's going to win today, literally just because it's the way of the world.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, Florida State's only given up just under 20 points a game. Oklahoma's given up almost 30 points a game on defense. I mean, yes, historically you are correct. I'm just saying that I wouldn't be shocked if Florida State, and Vegas agrees, Florida State is a very solid team. I mean, they're the 13th ranked team in the country for a reason. And I mean, finally, Norvell has turned the corner with them. But I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I hope Oklahoma comes out and beats them 55-0.
It's the way of the road. Florida State's afraid of us, I think. I don't know about that, but it's how it works. They didn't beat us in softball. They don't beat us in football. I'm just going to ride with that. Because, again, I didn't really watch.
The linebackers are going to be the most important group of guys for the defense today. Is Deshaun White playing today for Oklahoma? Can't remember if he's.
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
Him and Danny and David are going to be important to making sure this doesn't get out of hand for Oklahoma. Mainly Danny Stutzman, and if whoever plays spy, I'm assuming it's Danny Stutzman, but Jordan Travis can absolutely kill any team with his legs. And Deshaun White will be impactful to make. I would assume he's the guy that's going to get matched up with their big 6'7" receiver. He's really the biggest guy that you have out there in coverage, and it's not like Wilson is that fast. He's not. He doesn't have Julio Jones speed. He has big size. So you kind of just got to match up Deshaun and hope that they can keep up. Maybe put like a Billy Bowman or a Key Lawrence over top just to ensure that nothing gets, Travis doesn't get too many deep balls and starts gaining confidence. But that's what I would assume, right? The defensive line, I don't think will have too much of a worry when it comes to the run game, because their run game really wasn't amazing this year. They didn't have one guy over 1,000 yards in their entire season. Their best running back this year went for 965 on 141 attempts, average 6.8 per carry. So he wasn't terrible, but you're not going to see them. I think it's more so the game planning won't really lend to them running the ball a lot with their running backs. It's going to be, can Jordan Travis make the plays on his feet when he needs to? If that can at least, I don't think we're ever going to, at least not this year, even in this bowl game, we're going to say Oklahoma can stop a running quarterback. But if you can make him less of a threat with his feet, that's when I think Oklahoma really has a shot. And they haven't shown it at all year, but this is the first game where they get 3 or 4 weeks to prepare for the team, and the linebackers know what's coming to them. They're not trying to turn around after 1 week. They're trying to figure out how can they make Jordan's legs a non-factor. And if they can do that, this game is going to be much closer than the line says it will be. If they can't, this game might be able for Florida State, but I'm hoping that's not the case.
And another thing I will say about Florida State is I know early in the season, I'm sure we all remember, and Brandon, I think you were still here before you went off the basic, but when Florida State and LSU played the second week, where that crazy game where Florida State ended up winning by 1. But when you look at their 3 losses, and we talk about Oklahoma, how close they lost in 4 games, 4 out of their 6 losses, they lost by 1 possession or fewer. Florida State lost by 10 to Wake Forest, lost by 2 to NC State, and lost by 6 to Clemson. So they didn't necessarily get blown out in any game that they played. And I will say the ACC is not the greatest, but I would also say that the Big 12 isn't the greatest. But I think the Big 12 is a little bit better top to bottom than the ACC is and has been recently. But Florida State, they play a lot of close games. They won a lot of close games. They lost a handful of close games. So they're similar to Oklahoma in that sense, where they played a lot of close games, won some of them, lost some of them, but they won obviously more than what Oklahoma did, and they finished off and beat Florida in their last week. But I'm just wary of Florida State just because of the type of momentum they have, and also they are putting together a season where they're really bouncing back, and I really think they want to put an exclamation point and a stamp on this season, and I know that they're going to be motivated.
When's the last time Oklahoma finished with a losing record? Probably before their life, like genuinely speaking, I don't know.
No, 90, was it 98?
90, okay,
I want to
It was
say
right before Bob.
3 or 4.
yeah,
So,
I think it was 98 maybe.
That's 20 years. So like that's something that you're talking all this Florida State stuff, and that makes sense. They want to finish 10-3, want to top it off, but like Oklahoma has not had a losing season in so long. I feel like that's something too. And I just don't see it. I don't see 6 and 7. I think Oklahoma's going to win today. And again, you guys are providing all the insight and stats. You watch the season. I'm just telling you what's going to happen.
So
who's going to win this game?
So who's the big contributor on offense? I mean, obviously Dylan Gabriel. If Oklahoma's going to win, Dylan Gabriel is going to have to play well and play efficient. And they're out with Eric Gray. The offensive line is young. I know they listed Andrew Rame as the starting center, I believe, but he's not going to play because he had shoulder surgery, I believe it was. so you got Robert Conjol starting there. You've got Guyton on the right tackle. You've got Jacob Sexton at left tackle. Who's the big contributor? Is it a Javonte Barnes game? Is Oklahoma going to try to play ball control? Does Gavin Sawchuk contribute? I think Marvin Mims is going to play well. Who is the big contributor on offense, or are there a handful of contributors?
I think it's
either one of you want to start.
I think Javonte Barnes is going to be heavily relied upon today, and he's going to have to play well. But I also think we're going to see a little bit of Gavin Sawchuk, and I think both need to play well and both should play well. Oklahoma's going to win, so I don't know how it's going to happen, but something like that's going to happen.
Also, we should just all forget about a possibility of Oklahoma playing a ball control game. Levy does not play that game, and that's fine. But we should it's better to just not expect that. And if he surprises us with playing ball control and trying to control the clock, it's going to be a great surprise. But it's going to be very unlikely. It's like seeing a unicorn. Probably never going to happen.
How about Braden Willis? His last ever game as a Sooner. Shit's going to mean something to him. Why not? He's put together a pretty good season on the stat sheet. So why not Willis?
I think the key will be along the offensive line. Can the two tackles, especially Tyler Guyton protecting Gabriel's blind side, can they keep Jared Verse in that pass rush off of Dylan Gabriel? Can they protect him?
Verse is a good player. I agree with you. But you're talking about him like he's the next Jason Taylor or some shit. The dude at the end of the day had 7 sacks. Which, again, good season. He's not Jason Taylor.
But going up against a young right tackle is what would go in Verse's advantage.
I'm gonna look dumb as hell if Florida State runs us out of the gym today and Jared Verse has 3 sacks. But
I don't think it's crazy.
I just don't think it's not gonna happen.
If it was Anton out there, then Anton and then Wania out there as tackles, I would agree with you. But the fact that it's Sexton and Guyton, that's where Verse and the defensive line have more of an advantage, because now you're going up against inexperience. And then like you said, we're also missing Andrew Ring, and Conjol's going to be there. I mean, if you guys watch the Oklahoma breakdown, one of the biggest things that Eichert always mentioned about Ring was how his ball placement when it comes to snapping the ball wasn't always great, but it had improved throughout the year. Conjol doesn't have that ability when it comes to snapping the ball. I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly what the hell he's talking about. I'm just pretty much saying what Eichert said. So I'm assuming that still may be an issue where Dylan Gabriel's ball skills are going to be put to the test if Conjol does have some bad snaps. I'm just going to assume the offensive line does pretty good, because we have one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. The players that need to play well are the running backs, because when we've seen when this team can't run the ball well, the offense doesn't run very well. The defense has pretty much free pass rush against Dylan Gabriel, and Dylan doesn't do well when he thinks that something's about to go bad. He starts holding onto the ball a little bit too long, puts himself potentially in a situation where it's not ideal, and the ball doesn't get out on time. If the ball gets ran well, which I believe it will, this offense will be fine. Will be what we've seen all year. And again, it's going to be up to the defense. This offense should be able to move the ball. Can the defense just stop the Florida State offense and Jordan Travis? I think that's really my biggest question for today's game. If Jordan Travis gets to run around and looks like he's playing backyard football, Oklahoma's fucked. But if he looks like just a pocket passer, Oklahoma's got a very, very good chance of winning this game.
Rush 3, drop 8.
Probably not.
I mean, they do have a great shot of winning it, and I understand, Brandon, your gut feeling and everything, and historically you're right. It's just I have to look at it analytically, because that's the way I think, and I'm just going to warn you that I really think Johnny Wilson's going to be a problem.
When push comes to shove, that shit doesn't matter. Like, simply put, it doesn't. Like, they're 1-6 all time against us. They lose to us in softball. It doesn't matter. Your analytics, and I understand it probably does matter, but it doesn't matter, if that makes sense. It doesn't matter. Oklahoma wins. I'm telling you right now.
I think Javonte Barnes goes for 100+ today. And if they do that, and then, whether it's Gavin Sawchuk or Tolly Walker, if they can contribute, and if this team can rush for over 200 yards combined, I think Oklahoma can win this game. And because at the end of the day, Florida State's not going to be able to rush, and they're not going to be able to really blitz as much if they're able to run the ball and go over 200 yards as a team. If they do that, not necessarily in ball control, is just make them respect it. I think that Oklahoma has a legitimate chance, and that means that the offensive line is playing well if they're able to run over 200 yards.
Plus,
I think
who's
that's a big
going to
key.
be missing in this game? Because I mean, we're not going to be the only team. Like the Florida State Seminoles have to have players missing too, or not playing, whatever the case may be.
They're a pretty young squad. I don't think it's if they are missing anyone. I don't think
They're
it's
running a
anyone
full
important.
lineup.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure who they're all missing. I don't think it's a whole lot. I think Just the Hat said Brandon's definitely feeling the cheesiest, and I agree.
I might be the biggest homer of all time. Like, and I'll admit that.
You are.
I really do. I admit it. I'm a Sooner, obviously, but like Florida State doesn't beat us. Like Oklahoma State doesn't beat us. Like for some reason they just don't. The Dolphins have been. You're a Patriot. I'm a Dolphin. You know that. The Dolphins have been historically awful in my lifetime.
Still are bad.
Horrible.
Pretty bad.
Every single year the Patriots would come to town in Miami. It made no sense because I'm sure analytically or statistically you're supposed to beat the shit out of us. The Dolphins win. That's stuff happens. The Patriots can't beat the Dolphins in Miami. The Seminoles can't beat Oklahoma in anything. Oklahoma wins.
So who has a bigger game today, Jalil Farouk or Marvin Mims?
Marvin Mims.
Oh, man, see, I think it's going to be Marvin. But I hope that wouldn't put him in a spot where he thinks he should leave or where it makes him feel like it's a safer bet on himself to leave college and go to the pros. Not that I would fault him for it, but selfishly, I do want him to stay at Oklahoma one more year. Jalil Farouk is going to have a good game, though. It really just the biggest problem with the wide receivers this year has been their case of the dropsies. If they can quit it, if we just avoid drop passes, this offense should be, again, fine. But the biggest thing that was killing drives was the wide receivers would keep dropping the ball. And if that is still an issue, then I think it is fair to start questioning, can LD Washington coach wide receivers? Because I've been throughout the season, I said drop passes are not so much on the coaching, it's concentration by the players themselves. But if you've had a month to prepare and you can't get them focused to catch a football, which is their job on a football field, then maybe the coaching search for a wide receivers coach has to be a much bigger priority than it has been throughout the last month or so. If they don't drop balls at all, then the Washington gets to keep his job and the boys will run. And again, it'll be either an absolute shootout or the Oklahoma defense will find a way to do something.
Another thing that I thought was interesting on the depth chart is Nick Anderson is number 2 behind Jalil Farouk. Is this the game where we see Nick Anderson, and I know Jaden Gibson's number 2 behind Marvin Mims? Do we see both Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson get significant playing time? And I say significant. I'm not saying, half the game or 3/4 of the game, but we might be able to see a Jalil Farouk, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, and maybe a Marvin Mims type lineup, in some sort of mix or fashion. And I know, you could send one into the slot, or maybe it's LV Bunkley Shelton in the slot, and maybe Mims is off the field. We might be able to see like a Nick Anderson and a Jaden Gibson. I know, Brandon, you were extremely excited about Jalil Farouk when we first got here, and he's played fantastic. Another guy that you've been really high on, and I think we all been high on him, is Jaden Gibson. I'd like to see Gibson get some run at the wide receiver position, and I think he will.
So do I. I mean, I don't know about think he will, but I definitely want to see him. I think Jaden Gibson has all the tools to be ridiculous. And then you see in the spring game, his one opportunity to actually play, he ran a post and housed it for a huge touchdown, the long stride. I would love to see Jaden Gibson get some runs today. I'm excited for all the young bucks, man. Gavin Sawchuk's gonna play today. We're gonna see him, guarantee it. Take it to the bank.
And I'm hoping to see along the offensive line, McCade Mettauer, I know is supposed to be the starting guy, And maybe he'll start for half the game, and maybe Oklahoma's blowing him out, and they're going to give some of the younger offensive linemen a chance. I'd like to see Savion Byrd play. I know it's in a bowl game, and it could be in the second half, and Oklahoma might be winning big or might be losing big one way or another. But I'd like to see Savion Byrd get some run at the left guard. He's listed as second as an or to Bray Walker, and Bray Walker is going to be calling at the end of this season. But I'd like to see Savion Byrd because he came in with a lot of hype and a lot of expectations. And not that he's under delivering. I mean, he's just a redshirt freshman. I just would like to see him get an opportunity. He's 6'5", 310 pounds. He's a young guy. I know Cade Mettower is supposed to be coming back as far as what we can tell. And maybe does a Chris Murray take a step back and let Jake Taylor play at the right guard position?
Would love to see Taylor play, but I mean, I think the guy who has the most to gain from this game is Big Jake Sexton over there on the other tackle spot. Like if he plays well today, he's going to start next season. I feel like it's an audition, and if he's not already the favorite to start next season, I mean, if he plays well today, there's no doubt he has the most to gain from today.
And you know that the staff likes him. I mean, the staff doesn't have an or by his name. I mean, he's starting over a redshirt sophomore in Aaron Parks, and Aaron Parks is good. But if you're able to come in as a true freshman, and I know it's a bowl game, it's hard to play at a starting position.
That you think is the GOAT?
Huh? Do what?
I wish he was lining up against
Jared Verse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it'd be funny if Big Sexy.
I'm telling you, Jared Verse is really good. And just to keep an eye on him. That's all I'm saying.
How about Gavin Freeman? That's a great comment. I would like to see Gavin Freeman too. I'm having fun.
Let's do this because we don't. I want to make sure that people have some time between the end of our stream and the beginning of the game. Let's go your X Factor player for today's game. If you want to have one on each side of the ball, feel free. And your score prediction. What do you think the score will be at the end of the game? Do you want to start, Brandon?
Big Sexy on the offensive line. Again, I just mentioned, I think he has the most to gain, most to lose from today's game. I think it's an audition for him. I think he's got a lot to play for. So I'm going to pick him on the offensive side. I think if he plays well, obviously he's going to help establish the run game and pass pro. Jake Sexton on the offensive side of the ball because everybody else is going to play well. Defense, let's go Danny Stutzman. Danny Stutzman's going to fly around the field, make some tackles. And again, I'm telling you guys what's going to happen. Oklahoma is going to win. Let's go 33-27 Sooners.
Okay. I'm going to say on the offensive side as well, along the offensive line, my X factor is going to be Tyler Guyton. That is Dylan Gabriel's blind side. Guyton has played a little bit in, relief of Wanya Morris when he was out for a couple games earlier. I think if he can protect and keep Dylan Gabriel upright, that's going to be a big factor in this game. Defensively, I'm going to put as Woody Washington. I'm going to think that Woody Washington's going to have his hands full with Johnny Wilson and is going to be part of the team to try to slow him down. And I think he's going to get some safety help. And I think Woody Washington needs to have a good game. And it could be CJ Colton, whoever's matching up against Johnny Wilson. My score prediction is going to be 34-28 Florida State.
So you picked one more point for each side and picked the other guys?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Barney, I don't think you've been here the entire time. Me and Brumbaugh have actually said Florida State's going to win this game. So my X factor on the defense, I'm going to go with Ethan Downs. I think he's got to have a pretty big game. He's got to show that he can get all those tackles for loss, show that it wasn't a fluke. I know it's crazy to say that, but you got some time they've also had time to prepare for you. Can you do your thing and actually get in the backfield and stop them? On the offense, I'm going to go with Javonte Barnes just because running the ball for this offense is very important. And if they can't, the offense is going to stall out very, very fast. For my score prediction, I think Oklahoma covers, especially with the 10 points that are given. And I think it could be a pretty close game. I'm going to go with 35-32. And it could be a last-second field goal that wins the game for Florida State.
Disappointed in you guys, but you guys are the negative people of this podcast,
Cool.
so I'm not shocked. What I'm really
Cole, I
disappointed in
know.
is Jimmy Satterfield. Jimmy Satterfield is my guy. We've been
You
together
guys are
for a long
Dolphins
time.
fans.
We're Dolphins together, and he just dropped 38-27 Florida State. Jimmy, come on.
Robert does have a good point here. Venables should have a good idea of what Norvell does because of his experience at Clemson, playing him in conference. So we'll see if he can transfer it. I think at this point, it's not so much can Venables coach against Florida State or against anyone. It's does he have the players that can do what he needs them to do.
Quick question: if Oklahoma does win today and goes to 7-1 against Florida State all time, will you guys also subscribe to this little theory I have that for some reason some team is just always going to be better?
Yeah, I'll subscribe to that.
Because you guys both say it doesn't make sense, but I'm telling you right now it's going to happen. I don't know why. I really don't. But Oklahoma's going to win.
Brandon, you see one of the most recent comments?
Yeah, it's tiny. That has nothing to do with the outcome of this game.
That is true. That is true. So I don't know. It's going to be a good game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout one way or another. And I think both teams will be motivated. And I know Florida State's going to be ready to roll. And I know that Oklahoma wants to end up 7-6, cap off a winning season, and feeling the cheesiest.
All right.
We're going to dump cheeses all over the state tonight.
I got to hold you guys back for a second because I want to know what Barney's thinking here. Gabriel will enter the portal after the game. Why? What is your thought process there? Is it just wishful thinking because you hate Dylan Gabriel? Or do you genuinely think that Dylan Gabriel thinks that Jackson Arnold will beat him out immediately coming into college? I guess we're just going to wait for Barney's response because now I got to know. We can wait time if you guys want.
No,
Let's just sit
here. Just sit here and just stare at each other.
Everybody's drinking voice for the game today. Brum, you're probably drinking Pedialyte. What about
ice cold water, high quality H2O?
Me too.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Miller
Lite's kind of like water though.
Essentially water.
Goes down.
A fine water.
It is, but I don't think there's a chance that Dylan Gabriel transfers after this game.
No. Okay. So here's something interesting, because we're seeing freshmen starting to go into practice for the bowl game. Do you think there would be a big storyline if Jackson Arnold decided to not go to the Under Armour game and practice with the team for the bowl game today? Do you think that people would start kind of? I would hope that people learn from the Spencer Rattler stuff, but probably start chanting Jackson Arnold throughout the game.
Drum mentioned that, and I was gonna kind of what you're saying along the lines. Are you pretty much Jackson Arnold's gonna play next season, right?
No.
Yes.
If we're blowing teams,
that's what Drum is saying.
No, I don't think so.
But he brought up a long list of again, it's the history. History repeats itself. It's a thing. You mentioned Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams. It's happened in Oklahoma forever. Josh Heupel. It's what we do. I believe it.
I don't know. I think Dylan Gabriel plays all of next season, assuming that he stays healthy.
Now, if there is an injury, then I do think that's when Jackson comes in and could take the starting job.
So he doesn't, but does it?
But it's not going to be day one. I don't think Jackson Arnold's got.
No.
I know people want him to be the savior, but for the most part, freshman quarterback do not just come in and transform a program. Trevor Lawrence, I think what happened with Trevor Lawrence and Clemson is going to be what would most likely represent what Jackson Arnold would do for Oklahoma.
If Jackson Arnold gets an opportunity to start, do you think he gives it up?
Most likely not.
I agree. I think and I think Dylan Gabriel's good. Again, I didn't get to watch much, but statistically speaking, at least he played well. And I watched the first two games against Popcorn State. Obviously, he balled out there. In the Texas Tech game, he played really well too. So the only thing I've seen from Dylan Gabriel has been good, and the stats are good. So I would not mind seeing Dylan Gabriel as QB1 next season. I think that's the hope. I think he runs the offense the best.
Barney responded. It was just wishful thinking from my understanding. He wants. Oh no, he wants Gabriel to stay. More than likely, if he's not going to enter the portal, if he leaves, it will be for the NFL, which wouldn't make any sense for Dylan Gabriel at this point. But you're right. He hasn't confirmed if he's staying or leaving. But the transfer portal doesn't seem likely or really a relevant opportunity for him. It'll be the NFL or Oklahoma.
Yeah, and you know what we should do after the game? We should have an immediate reaction video that we can post. And,
Good and be like,
all right. Well,
let's see how we're
tune in
functioning at that point.
Tune in after the
Alright,
Florida State Oklahoma bowl game. See who's going to be feeling the cheesiest. Is it going to be me or Brandon? And we will be more than likely pretty drunk at that point. So feel free to join us in that endeavor. I saw some people drinking the Bud Light. Jimmy,
you're my guy.
Bud Light.
Except you picked Florida State.
Thanks, 409 Hurricane. We do
904.
904 Hurricane.
He's already drunk.
We do enjoy having a top 5 recruiting class, and it's going to continue to go up. Yeah. All right, we've got 12 minutes before the game starts. We appreciate you guys watching. We will see you after the game for post-game shenanigans that are going to be way more rowdy than this one.
Boomer Sooner. I picked by 6. Sooners by 6.
So, all right.
Okay.
33-27 Sooners.
All right. We'll see you guys in a few hours.
See you.